Rocky Top Insider presents the RTI Lowdown with Bob Baskerville and Chris Lowe.
Welcome. Time for another edition. It's been a while, but we're back. It's the RTI Lowdown, coming to you on a Sunday evening. I'm Bob Baskerville, your host, joined as always by one of the best there is out there. You know him with On3 Sports. He's a pretty good guy. I feel lucky to just hang with him. It's Chris Lowe. Steele, how are you, man?
It depends on who you ask that question to, Bob.
Yes.
But I am well, and I'm ready, rested up, trying to get down to fighting weight, ready for the football season, and it's here. But now I look forward to another year of hanging out with you and talking a little bit about all things college football, Tennessee, college hoops, whatever is out there. But no, it's hey, this time next week when we're on, we will have played a few college football games.
It's absolutely right. It's almost time, everybody. 2 weeks from right now, we'll be recapping Tennessee's season opener with Furman, looking ahead to another college football season that, if this offseason's been any indication, it's sure to be loaded with other talking points beyond the games on the field. Sad to say, there's so much of that. Playoff expansion talk after this coming season. All sorts of gray area eligibility matters. I mean, every single day there's something new. New NIL and pay-for-play paradigms popping up all over the place. We're back to talk about all of it with you every single week here on the Lowdown. And we'll begin today with what's happening on the field, though, as the Vols wrapped up their preseason scrimmages and they shift their focus into pregame week preparation. We'll talk about that guy in Chattanooga that is coming to Rocky Top next season, David Gabriel George, and his positively nuclear high school senior year debut the other night. And we'll also talk about how the Vols stack up in the upcoming gauntlet of a season that exists in the SEC. And we'll get some serious expertise to help that conversation. As one of the ultimate authorities in all things college football, Phil Steele joins the program. We are so back. But before all that, let's give a shout out to our sponsor. This episode of The Lowdown is brought to you by the Tate Insurance Group. If you're in the market for a great locally based insurance professional to help with your home, your car, or business coverage, you don't need to look any further. These are the folks. It's the Tate Insurance Group, and we appreciate their partnership continuing on with the Lowdown. Also, if you're watching us on the Rocky Top Insider YouTube channel, make sure you like and subscribe, or if you're checking us out as a podcast, it's all good. Just make sure you download us, make us part of your regular rotation. Topic A, Vol football. Preseason workouts are in the home stretch. The scrimmages are finished. The depth chart is taking shape, and now we stand by for confirmation on who will officially assume the most important spot in that Tennessee on-field lineup that opens the 2026 season against Furman. CeeLo, after months of who's it going to be, we're expecting to hear something from Josh Heupel, hopefully sooner than later, as to who will be designated as QB1 for the Vols, but it feels like all indicators it's becoming pretty clear to us. Am I right?
Well, first of all, I'm glad to be talking about quarterbacks and ball games and
Yes.
not all the nonsense off the field. I don't know about you, but I'm so fatigued by all the craziness that surrounds the game. But I still love the product. But quarterback, yep, you're right. Ever since the spring ended, I think most people felt like, having talked to people around the program, that Faison Brandon had really positioned himself well to be the starter, and he's only solidified that this preseason. I do 100% expect him to be the starter. I don't know that Josh Heupel's timeline, though, in announcing that is going to fall in line with ours or anybody else's. I think he'll announce it when he's ready to announce it, how he wants to announce it, knowing Josh as I do. But yes, and I think when you have quarterback competitions, Bob, a lot of time when one kid wins it is, again, I think Brandon has done enough to do that. It's the narrative, or sometimes the notion is, well, the other kid has played poorly. I don't think that's the case at all with George McIntyre. I think, in fact, he's played some of his better football this preseason and has made it a race. But I don't think it's, and again, the people I trust, I don't think there's been much of a question to this point that Brandon gives them the best chance at this point. His playmaking ability, He's more creative. He's more explosive. Just a guy that when things break down, if he has to go off script, that he's the better option there. And that's not to say at some point that George McIntyre might be able to help him. You rarely get through a season anymore with just one quarterback. It might be a quarter, Bob. It might be 2 series. If a quarterback gets banged up, it might be a half. It might be 2 games. But you better have 2. And I think when we hear from Josh officially, I guarantee you that's pretty much what he's going to say. But I look forward to seeing what a kid as talented as Brandon can do in a real game. I talked to another coach at another SEC school this year, and he told me he thought that Brandon was the best quarterback in this class, in the 26 class that they'd seen. And probably the most complete package. The way he throws the football, as I said, the way he's able to move around and make plays. But, boy, that's a tough assignment for a freshman in any league, especially in the SEC, to start from the get-go. Hadn't happened at Tennessee since Brent Schaefer in 2004, so more than 20 years ago, when he and Eric Ames shared snaps that season, that a true freshman right out of high school has started the first game for Tennessee.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I've been, jogging my memory in just the recent state in terms of other true freshman quarterbacks we have seen. I guess last year Michigan did it with Bryce Underwood. The season before, Texas A&M, Marcel Reed did it. And neither of those guys went out and lit it up by any stretch, but I don't think they were liabilities necessarily either. And so I think that's the part that's interesting with this team, Chris, is if you look around that offensive setup, the offensive line by all accounts should be strong. The running game, that's always a staple with Josh Heupel. It's kind of the sneaky secret sauce. I mean, it's not that sneaky because it happens every year. We talk about kind of that, that wide open offense, but the running game is really what sets the table for that. And you've got Deshaun Bishop back. I'm hearing great reviews on Javon Gordon. And then the receiving room is loaded. Staley, Matthews, Travis Smith. I mean, the list goes on. So you put all those together, and I think if we can get serviceable performance from Faison Brandon to start, not a game manager, maybe a little more than that, but a guy who is going to go out there and just, I'm not expecting an explosion from him offensively. I could be wrong, but we'll see. But man, I think there is a lot of opportunity for whoever gets the keys at the quarterback position here.
Well, this won't be Josh's first rodeo with a true freshman quarterback. He did it with Dylan Gabriel at UCF. Right. And Gabriel started 12 games that year. Josh was quick to remind me that this summer or back in May when I had a chance to sit down with it. And so I don't think he's ever, a lot of people think, well, coaches don't want to play a true freshman. In an ideal world, they probably don't. But when he's the best guy, and I've always said this, you can't fool the players in the field, then they're going to do it. Josh is not going to put Brandon in a situation where he has to go out there and win games. Yes, they're going to ask him to make plays. They're going to ask him to make big throws on third down. But they're going to run the football, Bob. They're going to do those things, that he's always done, Heupel's always done with his offenses. I do like the 2 top receivers, as you point out. Keys didn't practice, didn't scrimmage on Saturday. They got to get him out there. They're going to need him. That's going to be important. I don't know that they have a 3, a 4, and a 5 right now that you can point to a receiver and say, this guy's going to be a big-time difference maker. Now, when you get 2, the caliber that they have, that's always a good place to start. But I think depth at receiver, and again, Keys is a really talented kid. I don't know how much he's done in scrimmages or anything. They need him healthy. I think that will be pardon the pun, that will be a key for this football team. I also think the offensive line will be a strength. I really do. There's no reason with who they are bringing back, who they plugged in. I thought what they did in the portal was really good. That they should be able to lean on those guys in tough situations in the red zone when they're 3rd and 4th and short. And remember, when you add in a talent, a kid who can create the way Brandon can, you're almost adding a 12th player on offense that the defense has to defend, much like Josh Dobbs when he was at Tennessee, a lot like Hendon Hooker. Although I think just based on the people I've talked to, and I'm not saying he's going to come in and be Hendon Hooker. Remember, Hendon Hooker was blew hot and cold at Virginia Tech before he got to Tennessee. But I think this kid is probably even more athletic and more dynamic just from an athletic standpoint than even Hendon Hooker was.
Yeah, speaking of that, our former Vol quarterbacks showed out last night in NFL preseason. I don't know if you saw that. Joe Milton, big game. Josh Dobbs had a long touchdown run. And they're all proteges of the Josh Heupel system ultimately. And that's, well, not Josh, but Josh Dobbs. But still, that's a pretty good sign for whoever gets the job between Faison Brandon and George McIntyre. But again, all indicators are leaning towards Brandon. We want to talk about the defense too, because the defense, I think, while we talk about flush with opportunity on the offensive side, the defensive side are facing some challenges. And we're going to get to that a little later in the show. But before we get to that, we're really excited to introduce our guest, who's going to be spending a little time with us, talking about Tennessee, talking about SEC. Now, if you're like me, I've been a disciple of this guy's work every single summer in the off season. This guy I consider one of the foremost authorities when it comes to college football. His magazine is a Bible for many, myself included. See, I'm holding it right there. There it is. It's Phil Steele of the Phil Steele magazine. I'm going to bring him on right now. Phil, put you there. There you are. Phil, can you hear us?
I hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes,
awesome.
sir.
Awesome. Great being on, guys.
Yeah, thank you for joining us, man. Really appreciate it. We felt like it'd be great to get you on before the madness of the season begins, and we are right there at the precipice. And I always wonder, as I'm reading your magazine in the summer and everything, it feels like, the summer is kind of the off season. The preseason's kind of your Super Bowl in a lot of ways, and that doesn't mean you don't stay close to the game all year long. But I feel like maybe then you kind of you become more, I don't want to say fade back into the picture and become a fan, but it's like we hear a little less from you once the season begins, and I bet you're probably just fine with that.
Yeah, once the season hits, I'm working 102 hours a week. I'm trying to keep track of 138 teams. I got 12 TVs in front of me on a Saturday. I'm watching 12 games all day long. Then on Sunday, I don't even watch the NFL. I watch replays of the college games and then go through the play-by-play of every single one. And I give the same amount of coverage to Georgia State versus Georgia Southern as I do when Alabama's playing Ohio State. I look at all. So, I mean, it's an incredibly busy football season for me. And that's why I'm not doing as many radio shows during the fall or being on Twitter as much.
Phil, it's great to be with you, man. It seems like forever ago we did the podcast at ESPN, and I'm always glad to talk to somebody who's been doing it as long or longer than I have. That's probably one of the best things about catching up with you, other than your tremendous work. Tier the SEC for me, if you would. The teams that you have the most confidence will make the playoff, maybe the tier right under those teams, and then maybe the teams in that third tier based on all your homework and research and knowing the depth of these schools the way you do.
Yeah, I think clearly, to me, it looks like Georgia and Texas are the top two teams. When you look at the overall depth and talent, both have top 10 offenses, top 10 defenses, tons of veterans across the board. Really no weakness. When you look at Texas, my lowest rated unit is defensive backs at number 19. When you look at Georgia, lowest rated unit, maybe receiving core. But overall, both teams extremely talented. Now, the next tier, your true playoff contenders, Alabama, Oklahoma, Mississippi, Texas A&M, and I would probably say those four would be a real strong tier there. Then the very next tier, these guys are also playoff contenders, but maybe not quite as strong. I got Tennessee, I've got LSU, and then potentially South Carolina. And then I think you go to the new head coaches in the next tier, which would be Auburn, Florida. I put Vanderbilt in that next one as well. And maybe Missouri probably slides in there. And then the bottom tier, even though I think Mississippi State's much improved, I'd have to put Mississippi State, Kentucky, and Arkansas at the bottom. So that's how I'd put them tier-wise.
It's interesting for me, from my perspective. It feels like that, you talk about the tiers and the SEC. It feels like a lot of the preseason chatter, it's it's kind of like Texas and Georgia and then everyone else. But that everyone else is, like you just mentioned, it's pretty congested. And I feel like I look at Tennessee's schedule, and there's obviously tough games. You got Texas coming to Knoxville early in the season, and then, you still have Alabama. You're on the road at Texas A&M. But then there's those, what I would consider to be swing games that are very dangerous. Auburn coming to Knoxville, Tennessee traveling to Columbia, South Carolina, even though it's an afternoon game. I think that's a benefit rather than a night game. But, I mean, these are all part and parcel of teams that, I mean, when everybody's going to be jockeying for playoff position, a couple things could swing a team's way and could change the outlook on everything. That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah, no doubt. In fact, you throw in a Tennessee home game against LSU, the second last game of the season. That's a big one. And I think when you look at Tennessee hosting a team like Texas, that's a good and a bad thing. A win there, and all of a sudden you're in playoff contention. The same thing hosting Alabama. That's a big game at home. If they win there, playoff contention. But lose those games, and that means you're having to play teams like South Carolina, Texas A&M on the road. So sometimes getting the big teams at home like that is a benefit, and sometimes it's a negative. But with Tennessee this year, I like the overall talent. To me, it's how quickly the defense comes around. Jim Knowles, been following him a long time. Seems like his defense takes hold the second year, not necessarily that first year, and that's a little bit of a concern for me. I think losing Farouk recently, that hurts the secondary a little bit. So how quickly the defense comes around and how quickly the new quarterback plays. But I'm pretty confident quarterback play for Tennessee this year because, first of all, Josh Heupel's success with first-year starting quarterbacks, and second of all, the supporting cast. The offensive line's outstanding. The receiving core is outstanding. The running back core is outstanding. So I think whoever wins the job, I'm leaning with Brandon, steps into a really good situation.
Phil, is this the year we see an at-large team with 3 losses get in the playoff? Clemson got in, 2 years ago they had 3, but they won the ACC. An at-large team's never gotten in with 3, especially, and I think you throw in this added dynamic, the SEC playing that 9th league game this year. How do you see that playing out?
Yeah, I definitely do. I think we will see a team with 3 losses get in because, as you mentioned with the SEC, there are a lot of quality teams at the top. And if you got a team like, let's say, Tennessee this year, let's say they lose to Texas at home, close loss to South Carolina on the road and A&M, but they beat LSU, beat Bama. I think that there would be a legitimate playoff contender. So I do believe somebody with 3 is going to get in, especially with the SEC expanding to the 9-game schedule. I believe that the committee's got to realize how tough that is to have both the Big Ten and SEC playing 9 games like that. And then some of the teams playing some super non-conference games as well. Like Texas has the 9 SEC games plus Ohio State. So I think a 3-loss Texas team would definitely get in.
Yeah, it's interesting. Let's stay with playoffs for a second because, boy, there has been so much back and forth. It's been going on for a long time, but this summer there were moments where it felt like it got amplified a little bit more, and that's the whole topic of what's a proper playoff field look like moving forward. We obviously know it's going to be 12 teams heading into this coming season, but beyond that, it runs the gamut. We've heard, 16, we've heard 20, we've heard 24. From your perspective, because you get a feel for all these teams, you talked about it, you monitor all their strengths, their weaknesses, and how deep the college game is these days. From your perspective, if you were thinking about a number that would make sense for playoff expansion, what do you think that would be?
Well, I don't want to get too many teams in the playoffs because I don't want it to become a battle of attrition. When you have too many teams and you're playing 4 or 5 games, maybe it's the healthiest team that wins the national title and not necessarily the best team. I think it's inevitable that we are going to expand. Okay. I mean, there's just too much thing for expansion, and we're at 12 now. I'm comfortable with 12, but if we are going to expand, I would put it to 16. And for this reason, I want to get rid of the damn bye week. It seems like, when the bye week came out, it was supposed to be a positive for teams, but it's actually turned out to be a big time negative. Even Kirby Smart can't get over the bye week. Teams are 1-7 when they have 3 weeks off, and they're taking on a team that just played last week. So I think if you go to 16, you can eliminate the bye week, level the playing field, and we're not going to see bye week teams are 1-7. Only Coach Signetti has been able to win during the bye with the advantage of the bye. So I think right now it would be 16, but I do think that we're going to expand from the 12 that we're at right now. It's just a matter of to what number.
Yeah, I agree, Phil. Expansion's coming, and it's just a matter of whether the Big Ten and the SEC can agree on a number. And so far, they haven't been able to do that, and they're the ones that have all the power. Is there an Indiana out there this year? Is there someone outside the usual suspects, not even winning a national title, but though make a really deep run and make a play for a national title?
I don't think so. I think there's too much strength at the overall top. I think if there's one team I would throw in there with a shot, and you said usual suspects, so I'm going to eliminate Alabama. I'm going to eliminate Oklahoma. They made the playoff last year. I'm going to say a team that hasn't made the playoff for a while, and that's USC. And when I look at USC, when I talked to Coach Riley, went over the roster with him, he feels it's the best defense he's had since he's been there. Gary Patterson's taken over as the defensive coordinator. I think he's one of the best in the game. They've got more size on the defensive line, like the defensive back seven. And then offensively, USC has my number 5 rated offensive line. They've got last year, Wayman Jordan went down to injury. King Miller filled in, a walk-on, had nearly 1,000 yards. They're both back. They got a couple of VHTs behind them in Shane Austin and Deshaun Rideau. And then you look at the receiving core. Lincoln Riley always develops receivers. Got plenty of talent to work with. And Jade Maeva may be a first-round draft pick after the season's over if he has a big year. And then you look at their schedule. They get Oregon at home, and they get Ohio State at home. And remember last year, USC if they would have beaten Oregon on the road in Autzen Stadium, and they gave them a great game. They did lose by 15, but it was a closer game than that. If they beat them at home this year, I think they've got a shot at making a playoff. And if they do, I think they have the talent to make some movement in the playoff. I want to put them up there as a legitimate national title contender right now. I don't know if they've got the depth to go through 4 playoff games, but USC's the team I would throw out there. And naturally, we're not going to find an Indiana, a team that 2 years ago was the worst team in college football contending for the national title this year.
We're talking with Phil Steele of Phil Steele's College Football Preview. Phil, conversely, when we talk about that, the preseason polls are out, and we know a lot of times those aren't necessarily the most accurate measure of what's going to happen as the season goes along. But it's, as we're waiting for the games and talking season, one of the topics that I've talked about on the radio has been, what team do you see that maybe is kind of surprising to you in let's just say in the AP poll, that's getting a lot of love. The one that, I would argue for me, there's a couple teams that are going to be going through some change. They're going to be highly talented, but I recognize that Ole Miss with Pete Golding, they really rallied in the playoffs, made a great enchanted run last year. I think they were kind of the fan favorite. But I think this year, this season is new. What will that look like? LSU, say whatever you want about Lane Kiffin, but onboarding with a brand new team, a lot of talent, I get it, but I still think, their schedule's not easy. Nobody's is in the SEC. And then one more I would say is Texas Tech. With the whole Brendan Sorsby issue, I know Will Hammond is an experienced quarterback who can come in and hopefully carry the load, but all those teams are right around the top 12 or 13. Or is there any other team? Do you agree with any of those that I'm mentioning, or is there another team you're seeing where you're like, man, that feels like a lot of love this early in the season?
Yeah, I think you touched on the question mark teams, Bob, and I'll address each one of the 3 real quick. When you look at Ole Miss, I think they are a legitimate title contender. Their defense, remember their defense 2 years ago, gave up 14 points per game. Last year, they slipped to allowing 21. This year, I think their defensive front 7 could be closer resemble the 24 unit. And then when you've got a Trinidad Chambliss and a Kwan Lacey, you've got a head coach that's coached in the playoffs. I think Ole Miss has a great shot. Now, their schedule, I don't like the fact that they play LSU at home, massive game. And then the very next week, they have to go to the Swamp and play Florida. That is a dangerous situation. They also have to play Texas and Oklahoma on the road. So those are 3 possible places where they could very well be an underdog, but I think they're a threat. With Texas Tech, when I wrote the magazine, I was 90% sure that Brendan Sorsby was not going to play this year. So it was a surprise to me when they announced he would. and I had to adjust my power ratings. I put them back. That's why I've got them number 9. But when you look at their schedule, Bob, I've got them a touchdown favorite in every single game. Their toughest 2 games look to be at Cincinnati and at Baylor. Now, that's not an SEC schedule there, all right? So I think Texas Tech, with the talent, the money they've got, and the talent they brought in defensively, and they've got one of the best running back cores in the country, an outstanding offensive line, the receivers. And Will Hammond led that game over Utah. When last year, when the starting quarterback Morton went out against Utah, they had a slight lead in the fourth quarter. I'm like, okay, they're going to lose this thing. Then Hammond actually led them to the easy win over Utah. So I think they're just fine. Now, LSU is a team I definitely agree with you, Bob. I think there's just too much. They've got 59 new players this year. And they're super talented, but I did something I added to this year's magazine is the homegrown factor, which is, if you're a team, look at Florida State. They brought in like 50, 60 transfers one year, and they went 12-0. The next year, 50, 60 transfers, losing season, 50, 60 transfers, losing season. You see the top teams, Georgia, Texas, Ohio State, they use the portal, but they're not portal reliant. And last year, Texas Tech had the top portal class, but they threw it on top of my number 5 most experienced team. With LSU, they've got the top portal class, but they're throwing it on top of my number 93 most experienced team. Plus, Sam Leavitt didn't even participate in the spring. Well, let's see if he's 100% in the fall. And then you touched on it, playing Ole Miss on the road, Auburn on the road, Tennessee on the road, and then hosting Alabama, Texas A&M. Remember, Texas A&M crushed them last year in Death Valley.
Yeah.
And I don't even think the Clemson games would give me in the opener. So I think of the 3 teams, if you're looking for a team that's at the top 10, I believe they're 11th in the poll or right around there. I think they'd be the one that has the best chance of not being in the top 25 at the end of the year.
Well, Phil, man, it's I always love catching up. We're gonna talk football with you all day long, and you reel these names off, man. Are you in your sleep sometimes? You start reeling off the second team left guard at Oklahoma or Oklahoma State.
I have a recurring dream where it's like one day before the season starts and I haven't done my work, and I'm like, oh my God, I've got to get ready for the season. It's a true nightmare. And then my other nightmare would be watching TV and have a player make a play and he's not in my magazine. So those are the type of nightmares I have. It's all I do is college football. Ask my daughter. She'll tell you that outside of the college football world, I'm an idiot. So, but Chris, I really enjoyed doing shows with you at ESPN when we were there together.
I did too. Get you out here on this. Better chance Tennessee's closer to 9-3 or 7-5 this year, Phil.
I'm going to go closer to 9-3. I've got them favored in 9 games this year, favored in 8 games with one toss-up, which is Alabama. The 3 games I've got them a dog are home against Texas, a 4-point dog, at South Carolina, a 3-point dog, and at A&M, a 7-point dog. But since I've got them favored in 8, I'd say with the quarterback, I think they'll get better play. Remember last year, all the question marks at Ohio State about quarterback Julian Sand. He was a Heisman finalist. All the question marks at Notre Dame, C.J. Carr hasn't played. How are they going to do? Guess what? He did pretty well. Yeah. I think you're going to see the same thing out of Tennessee this year. So I'm definitely going closer to 9-3.
Well, man, keep up the great work. We'll absolutely be reading, Phil, and we'll catch up with you down the road. Happy footballing, all right?
Yeah, after football. And then, hey, guys, remember, the magazine's only available at Barnes & Noble and Books A Million, the only 2 brick-and-mortar stores, or philsteele.com. But a lot of fun talking Tennessee football with you guys today.
Phil, thank you so much, man. I got my magazine, I'll tell you that. So always appreciate it, and appreciate you spending some time with us.
All right, have a good one, guys. Great talking to you.
See you, Phil.
That is, like I said, that's a treat, man. That magazine is like, I get it every season, Chris. I never get through all of it. It is literally like a magazine form of an encyclopedia for college football.
Well,
I don't know how
he said it. He could tell you as much about Louisiana Monroe and Georgia State and Kent State as he could Alabama and Tennessee. I mean, that's how in depth he goes. And I've known Phil a long time. Worked with him a ton when I was at ESPN, and he told me how many years. What edition is this one? I think he said his goal was to get to maybe 50 years or something like that.
Yeah, 31 now. Yeah, this is the 32nd year.
40 or 50 years. You're right. It's hard to think about, for me, to think about going into the off season and then getting into the summer and getting ready for football without reading through Phil's magazine. So yeah, it was great to have him on the show tonight.
370 plus pages.
Yeah.
That's almost longer than one of your pieces that you do.
Not quite. I've been known to write long, as I've been told many times over the years. Sometimes.
Yeah.
I used to have a teacher. Used to have a teacher, Bob, who'd say it was in high school, the best teacher I ever had, William Boyce White Jr. Who'd say, usually the best way to say something is the shortest way.
Yeah. It's good advice.
I don't take that advice all the time.
No, same. Probably some people listening to this say that too. Before we go to more football, let's take a moment and talk about our sponsor, the Tate Insurance Group. They are your local insurance team. They are proud to call East Tennessee home. Just like our Vols, they know what it takes to overcome obstacles, to give their all, and to show true volunteer spirit for our community. Whether it's home, auto, or business coverage, they provide personal service that you can count on. And again, they care about what you care about, because this is where they live too. The Tate Insurance Group, local, trusted, always in your corner, right here at home. If you want to learn more about their products and what they can do to help you, because I'm certain that they could, you can give them a call, area code 865-862-8233. That's 865-862-8233. Or you can find more information on their website. Just go to tateinsurancegroup.com. That's tateinsurancegroup.com. And as always, we're thrilled as we go into our second go round of the lowdown that they are our partner. We can't thank them enough for that. All right.
Scott Tate, quite the athlete of his day up in Cincinnati.
Yeah, that's what I hear. I hear.
Hoops, football. I'm not sure. I think he was a baseball. His son, Jake, was a terrific baseball pitcher here, and went on to play. I think he played at Kentucky, Ohio U. But and Scott was a really good athlete. And you know what? He'll tell you he was a good athlete if you don't believe it.
Yeah. I know some guys like that. Hey, let's as we said before, we brought Phil Steele on, and we sure appreciate him hanging with us. We talked a lot about the Tennessee offense earlier in the show as we were talking about that quarterback situation, most notably, but the defense. And we're going to get to that in a second. I want to talk about the defense, but before we get to that, I want to talk about some of the factors that are going to be confronting this team as Tennessee heads into a new season. Now, there is good news. And what I would say is, man, based on everything I've heard from the RTI guys out there covering some of the practices and probably some of the stuff you hear, Chris, over at On 3, the good news is the hire of Derek Owings has been, by all accounts, so far a game changer. You can just tell by the way these guys look, the way they're, the speed on the field, all these other things. There's a reason Josh Heupel went and broke the bank with Derek Owings, and it feels like the early returns are very positive there.
Yeah, and you really start to see that once you play. But you also can measure that in the offseason: speed, strength, acceleration, power, being explosive, all those things that are paramount to winning in football. And I know they feel like some of their offseason numbers were a lot better than they had been. And Derek is he and Josh, I think most people know this, he and Josh go back to when they were together at UCF and continue to talk. And Derek was going to go actually somewhere 2 years ago, had an opportunity, talked to Josh, stayed in Indiana, and then Josh ended up talking to him into coming to Tennessee when he felt like he was going to make a move. Because remember, for Heupel, this is not something he's done very often, if any, and that's make sort of a massive overhaul of his staff. And bringing Owings I felt like a pretty big step for him. Same with Jim Knowles. But no, we find out a lot more about the impact once you get into the fourth quarter of games, especially early when it's hot. And how well you play. I mean, I don't think any Tennessee fan, anybody that's a football fan that watched that game, can get that image out of their mind of Vandy just absolutely mauling Tennessee in the second half last year. Beat them up physically, athletically, everything.
Yeah.
And I think that was, you're Josh Heupel, you're sitting there watching that and you're like, something's got to change. Well, a big part of that change was bringing in Derek Owings. And we're going to see, the kids in Indiana that I talked to last year, and following that team, they swear by it. You know, what he did for them, what he did for the team. And certainly that's the hope here at Tennessee. But yes, same as your guys at RTI said, I've heard the same thing. A stronger, leaner, more powerful football team based on what we've seen in preseason practice. But the real test does come during games.
I didn't think I could imagine Deshaun Bishop being more jacked than he was last season, but man, he looks now like an absolute superhero. So I mean, that's just one example of the changes. But to your point, let's see how that translates to the field. But again, all indicators are pretty promising there. Other strengths, we talked about this on the offensive side, but I'm going to touch on it once again. Deshaun Bishop, who we just talked about, Javen Gordon, who transferred in, seems like he's going to be a key contributor. DeJuan Morris, the running back room seems pretty solid. The wide receiver room, loaded in a word. Staley, Matthews, Travis Smith, Rodarius Jackson, TK Keys, who you mentioned earlier in the show, Joakim Dodson, Tyreek King, the local kid from Knoxville Catholic. All those guys look like they could be a factor at one point or another this season. But so that's the strength. But then there is adversity. And so far it's been managing injuries mostly on the defensive side of the football. We've already encountered some big ones, obviously, Chris. Jadaeus Richard, Jaden Harmon, and then most recently last week, Idris Farouk, all out for the season. And then what about Ethan Davis on the offensive side? They say he's going to be fine, but Ethan Davis has kind of had his career checkered with injury problems. And then you add in the Arian Carter 2-game suspension, which I want to talk about that in a second, just about the state of college football, because I'm getting a little ticked about that. And then the voided edge rusher that was amplified with Chaz Coleman's weird departure earlier in the summer. CeeLo, I want to get your take on this. To me, it feels like on the defensive side of the ball, we talk about Jim Knowles being a defensive mastermind. His status, I think, is going to be put to the test this season, man. Creativity is going to be key for that guy.
And Jim has always been creative. I mean, when you go back and look at his defenses, going all the way back to Duke and Oklahoma State, and most recently at Ohio State and Penn State, that's sort of been his calling card. Sound, able to create pressure. Not, I won't say disguise, but get to the quarterback in different ways. And I think that's probably going to be more important this year because they just don't right now have a guy on the edge, what I call finishers, Bob, that you can point to and say, this guy's going to be a quarterback.
Yeah.
You know he's going to be that guy. And most of your elite teams have that guy. Some of them have two of them. You go back to that Indiana team last year. The Ohio State defense in 24 when they won it all. So they're going to have to find those guys. I know they were encouraged by what they got out of Ty Weathersby in the scrimmage on Saturday. He made a couple of nice plays on the edge. They really need him to come on and be a consistent disruptor for them off the edge. And they need some of the other guys, some of the younger guys. The linebacker unit is really good. We'll see how Jim's going to be able to use some of those guys and maybe move them around and do some things. But if you ask me right now about the defense, there's always a glass half full, half empty. The thing that I would be concerned about is Tennessee being able to get to the quarterback with edge pressure and a defensive front inside. I think there's some ability there. Xavier Gillum is just a monster. He will have, in my mind, an all-SEC season. He is a stud. He comes from Penn State. He knows this defense. Certainly Jim Knowles, what he's got in Xavier Gillum. The kids call him X. He's big. He's physical. He can push the pocket. He's active. He'll be an enforcer in the middle of that defense. David Hobbs is another guy who's played. I think he's still. Rodney Garner wants to see more consistency, a little bit more fire, and they just have more guys. They just don't have a lot of guys that you can point to again who've played a lot of football, at this level, and been guys who are proven. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity. There's two ways to look at this, but a lot of opportunity for some guys who haven't played a lot there on the defensive line, both at the edge and the interior, to come on and play key roles. I think in the secondary, losing Farouk was there's no way to cut it other than this. This is a big loss.
Yeah.
He might have been the second or third best defender on the team. and gave them versatility to move him around and do things. He's a guy that cleans things up back there in the secondary. Well, he's gone. So they've really been heartened by the way Lane has played, the transfer from Penn State. He had a really good scrimmage Saturday. And I think TJ Metcalf, who, had he stayed at Michigan, might have been a captain. He played every game last year. He was productive. Getting him in the portal, certainly now as we look at some of the other things that have happened, the Farouk injury, Chaz Coleman leaving. You look at portal gets in this class, I think Metcalf is probably the most important, because if Lane continues to progress and play the way he did, Metcalf's a guy that could be an all-SEC type player, and a guy who's pretty versatile. He can cover, who can tackle, who can make plays in space. And I thought last year in particular, Bob, the defense really struggled to make tackles and plays in space. And that's where a guy like Metcalf can really help you back there.
Yeah, and by the way, we learned a little something, at least I did this week, that I've been calling him DeJuan Lane, and apparently, because that's how it's spelled.
Right.
But he's DeJuan Lane, right?
That's right.
So
that's right. It's sort of like, remember it was forever, it was Vescovi.
Yes.
At Tennessee, and then he finally told everybody his last year, actually, it's Vescovi. So,
yeah. Well, I heard the same stuff. I mean, it sounds like those guys both showed out this weekend in the last scrimmage. And so that defensive backfield, which we always felt was going to be a strength, because we haven't talked about Ty Redmond or anybody else, but it still could be a strength. It's just the depth is, we cannot take another significant injury, right?
Yeah.
That's
You're thin. Yeah. There's no margin for error. And that's why Tennessee's really been hamstrung back there. What do you want to call it? You lose guys like McCoy, and Ricky Gibson gets hurt. And then this year, obviously, Farouk. So they've had their share of injuries in the defensive backfield. But when you lose guys like Farouk, it just makes the margin for error nil, because you just never want to go into a season. Ty Redmond as a freshman really played beyond his years, but you never want to put a lot of guys in that position to start the season where they're having to play more snaps than you want to. And you just have to play at this level. Certainly in the SEC, you're going to have a lot of situations where you're going to have to play 5 and 6 DBs.
Yeah.
And when you have, the more options you have, the more experience you have back there, the easier it is to do that. When you look, I mean, you can't compare because, it's too late. Like Parcells says, you can't call 1-800 defensive back right now. But you look around the league at some of the better secondaries. A&M secondary is outstanding. Alabama's secondary is outstanding. Well, and they all have depth. Well, Tennessee doesn't have that kind of depth.
Right.
And when you are good and deep back there and experienced, it allows the defensive coordinator to do more things, to be a little bit more creative, to be more aggressive in situations. And I think that's why you bring in a guy like Jim Knowles. He's the one now that's got to figure it out.
Yeah. Now, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, I want to come back to this and get your take on it, because at the moment we're of the understanding that Arian Carter is going to miss the first 2 games of the season. Meanwhile, everything else that's swirling around the college football ecosystem. A guy today, literally, and this guy's been talked about, but it's become official that Daquan Wright, with a former Ole Miss player that's with the Cleveland Browns, is going to be cut from the Browns. And then he is going to go and try to re-enter the portal and presumably, I don't know, go back to Ole Miss. I don't know.
No, LSU. It's LSU. He's committed to LSU.
Oh, God. Okay. There we go. Got to love Lane Kiffin. So the thing is, that's a guy that he's had to be making some bit of money, even if he does get cut from the Browns. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be okay. I mean, this is me probably doing the, get off my lawn stuff, and there's nothing you and I can do to solve the woes of the college game right now. But this is crazy. And do you think there's any chance, do you think Tennessee, A, is fighting this behind the scenes at all, or B, are they standing down because they got sideways with the NCAA a few years back, right?
Well, I don't think that they're standing down. I don't know that Arian Carter and his family and Tennessee really want to go down the road of suing anybody at this point.
Yeah.
I don't want to really speak for the family, but that's the way it was communicated to me. But there's absolutely frustration there, Tennessee, starting with Josh Heupel, about just what you laid out there, that there's all these, other situations. And kids going to court and winning injunctions in the state of Louisiana, and the goalposts just keep moving. And I think that's what frustrates everybody. If a kid can go and get eligible and he's got an attorney willing to do that, don't blame the kid, blame the system, right? And I don't particularly think it's great for football. I don't think it's great for college football. If you're in the NFL, if you're in an NFL training camp, then you're a pro.
Yeah.
And where does it stop? And where do the lawsuits end? And I think the big question in this latest one, though, Bob, with Daquan Wright now committing, and he's got to clear waivers. And if he does that, then he wants to come back and play at LSU. Well, there is a rule in the SEC. It's been in place for a long time. Greg Sankey, the commissioner, has sent a couple of different memos to schools reminding them that the rules have not changed. They've stayed in place, that you cannot transfer after the winter portal, which there is no May or April portal now.
Right.
But after that portal closes, you cannot transfer within the conference. There is no intra-conference transfers. So everybody around the league, and I've talked to several people today, and I'm sure there's some legal loophole where it says, well, this kid is not going from school A to school B in the league transfer portal to that school. He went to NFL, and now he's coming back. That's probably going to be the way that this is argued in court. But I can promise you, Greg Sankey is not a happy camper about any of this. And it is going to be fascinating to sit back and see what the SEC does, what they attempt to do, if they can do anything, and what the reaction is going to be. This is a major draw that line in the sand. And I think that's what Lane Kiffin and LSU has done. And you know what? As long as they're keeping score, which the last time I checked, they always keep score in the SEC, this is probably not the last school who's going to try something like this.
Oh, I mean, here's the thing. Cut day hasn't even happened in the NFL. I mean, and I just wonder what's next. Are we going to hear in the next couple of weeks all sorts of players trying to do this? And I know that there's one judge has shot this stuff down, but there's so many, like you said earlier, there's just so many kind of asterisk deals that are in place. And then if all these players start to lawyer up and appeal, and it goes on. And I mean, I don't know, man. Like I said, I'm super happy that we're just a matter of days now away from football, real football being played. I'll even watch some of those week 0 games next weekend. But I just feel like the specter of all this stuff is going to keep hanging over us, and it's exhausting, quite honestly.
The weaponization of state courts, and listen, Tennessee's done the same thing once upon a time. Remember, with Nico Iamaleava, I should be able to get that right. The NCAA was getting ready to come down, going to make him eligible. State Attorney General stepped in along with Virginia and said you can't enforce those penalties. So it just is, and that's what the Save College Sports Act was supposed to help prevent. That every time that there's a rule that schools or players or attorneys couldn't go to court and legally challenge these things. And I don't know. And again, the NCAA is to blame for a lot of this because they let this go on forever. They kicked the can down the road. We've talked about that ad nauseum. Mm-hmm. And now here we are, utter chaos. And everyone's going to challenge everything in court. And I don't know where that ends. I really don't. I don't think any of it on either side and is good. I don't think most fans I talk to care about it. They think it's stupid. They think it's asinine that people could, and I do too, that you could go and be a part of an NFL training camp and play and get paid. And clearly Daquan Wright's taking money for an agent. He's signed with an agent. He's gotten paid. And I think that's the frustration with a kid like Arian Carter. Arian Carter took $400 to fly, sign with an agent. He can't play for 2 games. So that's the other thing. Does Daquan Wright come back? Can he play right away? Is he going to be suspended for 4 games? There's just so many questions like that out there that no one really has the answer to. And as long as that loophole remains open, Bob, we used to call Lane the portal king. Now I call him the NFL training camp king. Yeah. But that loophole, I know some coaches have come out against it. Dan Lanning has. I think Marcus Freeman said that, no, we're not going to participate in doing that. We're too far along in our semester at school. Imagine someone actually mentioned school. When's the last time you heard school mentioned in the realm of college football. But as long as that loophole's open, people are going to try to squeeze through it.
Speaking of school, did you see this about Lenora Sellers, the South Carolina quarterback?
I was with Lenores last week, talked to him, about some of that.
He's not taking a class this semester, right?
Every context matters, right, on everything. So he's got a bunch of like practicum type stuff, and I think he's got an online deal. He has graduated, but that's if you go around college football right now, Bob, you're going to find a lot of kids who have similar type situations. So he's doing things and doing some practicum. As far as going to in-person classes and that kind of thing, no. But you know what? I bet you if you went around the SEC, you find a lot. But I saw people jumped on that because I was actually with him for 20 minutes or so on Friday or Wednesday for a story I'm doing. We talked about some of the things he was doing with his practicum and the fact that he's already gotten his degree. Things always sort of, I know you have a hard time believing that sometimes things blow up on the internet or on chat rooms.
Never.
That never happens, does it? But no, I saw that and sort of chuckled because we had just talked about that the day before.
By all accounts, good kid, right? I mean, that's all I've ever heard.
He's got his degree, and he's, and I think it's with kids now coming in early in January, it's harder when you're transferring 2 or 3 times. Yeah. He's been at the same school. If you stay at the same school as early as you come in, who was the coach that they asked to coach? I don't know if it was Bobby Bowden or somebody said, well, how many kids have you graduated? He said, I've graduated every single kid who wanted to graduate. And so if a kid really is important to him to graduate with all the resources available now, and as long as they're on campus, they're there all through the summer, then there's no reason you shouldn't get your degree.
Yeah. Here. All right. We got one more thing to talk about before we go. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about this, and that is, I got to ask you, Chris, you down with DGG? Did you watch any of his debut performance, David Gabriel George, on Thursday night for Chattanooga Baylor, in a game that was loaded with D1 talent? They were taking on Brentwood Academy. A lot of Tennessee flavor to that, not just because the schools are in state, but also a lot of high-ranking recruits on both sides of the field in that one. But mostly, I think everybody's takeaway on David Gabriel George was, oh my, maybe the $2 million was worth it.
Listen, high school kids can't tackle him. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
Number two, but there are a lot of kids playing in that game who are high school kids who are going off to D1 school. So there was good competition. It wasn't like he was playing some school who's got a bunch of kids who are going, go off to college and major in economics or whatever. There was several kids on that field. Kenneth Simon was one of them, Kevin Simon's son. So that's, as high school competition goes, that was really stiff competition, but he still looked like he was a man among boys. I wasn't really surprised. I talked to enough people who had seen him. I went and spent a part of a day with David earlier this month, watched him practice, talked at length to him and his coach and his teammates, talked to college coaches about him, not only at Tennessee, but Ohio State, other places. They had recruited him, Georgia, Alabama. So, I knew he was a rare talent. And he looks like no other running back I have ever seen at that age, just physically. The way he's put together, how explosive he is, how he can run and pull away. His balance is incredible. So, I was looking forward to watching him play. I'd seen a lot of his clips from last year, but to watching him play in a live game, he is special. And, I don't know, I guess $2 million play a running back. I still think, just from looking at the game from 1,000 feet away, I don't know that I'd ever pay a high school running back that kind of cash. But you know what? If you're Josh Heupel in your Tennessee, much like when, of course, this was before NIL, but I remember when Nick Saban got to Alabama in 2007, Julio Jones was a senior down in Mobile. By all accounts, the best player in the country, just a total athletic freak. And in that state, Nick Saban said, we're going to get that kid. We got to get him. This makes a statement. We don't let a kid from like that leave our state. Now, I know David grew up in Canada, but this still is his third year of high school in Tennessee. I just think Josh Heupel in Tennessee sort of said the same thing. We've got to get this kid now in the NIL area. You got to pay $2 million to get him.
Yeah,
you got to do it, and we'll see. Again, if I'm looking at it from 1,000 feet away, do I split that money up and go get a pass rusher, a left tackle, maybe a running back? I don't know. I think they've had guys at Tennessee who are really good players rush for 1,000 yards that they paid $200,000-$300,000. I'm not sure Dylan Sampson ever made more than $300,000.
Yeah,
he rushed for 1,400 yards. Does a running back make that much difference? We're going to find out. But if anybody does, it's this kid.
Yeah, I was watching him. Everybody's been drawing comparisons to some of the greats, and he's got this mix. What I can't help but think about, and this guy was more of a scat back, but they also have some linkage because they've developed a friendship during the recruitment process. And DGG is much more developed physically than this guy, but the sense of balance that Gabriel George has, it reminded me of like a more jacked up version of Alvin Kamara. That's what I kept seeing, because this guy does not go down. It's not even that he's hard to tackle. He has ways of just, remember Alvin had that ability to put that hand into the ground and pivot and not go down. And this kid seems to have all of that too. And, but I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like it, because he's also the pictures, and you had talked about it in your piece on On3. I mean, we talked about Deshaun Bishop looking like a superhero. This guy absolutely looks like one.
Yeah, he just turned 18. God. So it's and he's incredibly strong in his core.
Yeah,
you watch him work out, see the exercises and the things. I can't emphasize that enough. How strong he is in his core. Which helps, his balance, and he's hard to get a really good hit on. And you know what? There are not a lot of guys who want to hit the kid. When he turns and he starts downhill, you don't want to get in his way. Yeah, Alvin is one of his favorite players. He was a Jahmyr Gibbs guy. He started Georgia Tech, went to Alabama.
Right.
John Robinson were three of the guys he mentioned to me when I spent time with him. Eric Westmoreland said that he reminds him a little bit of all three of those guys, a mix, some of their strengths. Of course, Eric was around Jamal Lewis. He was around Travis Henry, played with those guys at Tennessee. Eric now a coach on the Baylor staff. He's been there I think Eric's been there for almost 2 decades. And he even said, listen, I've seen a lot of good ones. This kid, not one quite like this kid at his age. I do want to say, though, there's been a lot of comparisons, a lot of hyperbole out there about this kid and how good he is, how he's the next this, next that. I hope that when he does get to Tennessee, the people remember he's just a freshman. He's still got to do it. He's still got to go against guys that are as big as him at the linebacker position, safeties who are almost as big as him, who are as fast and powerful, who've been in strength programs with the college level for 2 and 3 seasons. It's just a difference. When you go fishing in the biggest lake in the country, and then you go fishing in the Pacific Ocean, well, guess what? There's a lot of fish out there in the Pacific Ocean, not like the fish, in Lake Erie. And I think that would be my best comparison. I think this kid, if anybody's ever going to go from high school and be an All-America Heisman type kid, all SEC player in his first year, I think this kid has everything it takes to be that. But, man, I've seen it a million times. In this league, there are no guarantees.
Well, you probably wouldn't like what I said then on the radio. I said he's probably a top 5 running back in the SEC right now. And that, I know that is hyperbolic for sure. But, I mean, I'm telling you, it's like nothing I've seen, at least in recent memory.
Could he be?
Yeah.
Yeah, but, I mean, you guys got guys like Jaden Ball who's done it.
Sure.
Sean Bishop's done it. Those guys have rushed for 1,000 yards.
Yeah, Lacey and
Lacey and Ahmad Hardy. Those guys are pros right now.
Absolutely,
and have played, and that's why I'm just not ready to go down that road yet. I think he absolutely has everything it takes, mentally too. This kid is focused beyond focused and being the best he can be. I mean, haven't spent a little time with him. I can't say enough good things about him. But the transition, Bob, from high school to the SEC is pretty massive.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we've got 2027 to look forward to, but we got 2026 to tackle first. So we're about to embark on that. That does it for this week, and we're back for the long haul now, meaning we'll be here for you every week. As always, we appreciate you giving us a watch or listen, and a reminder to hit that like and subscribe button for the show on our YouTube channel if you're watching us there, or download our podcast wherever you listen to your pods. And also a reminder that if it's happening on Rocky Top, you can count on the guys at Rocky Top Insider covering it all for you. So keep it locked in on RockyTopInsider.com and all of RTI's socials for the best Tennessee Vol coverage anywhere. As always, many thanks to our fantastic sponsor, the Tate Insurance Group. Thank you to our guest, Phil Steele. And of course, thank you to CeeLo. It's great getting back at it with you, my friend. Looking forward to the season ahead and talking about it all with you.
Same here, Bob. We look forward to week 2, which will be our start of our game week.
Yes.
As we go into the opener on September the 5th.
Yeah.
So, yeah, looking forward to it, man. Always a lot of fun to talk football.
Definitely. And a shout out to Inward Half. I got my football themed shirt on. Those guys do a wonderful job. So thank you for that as well. That's it for us. Again, we appreciate you all making us a part of your viewing and listening routine. Until then, the next time we're back, enjoy these final weeks of summer. Get ready for football because it's coming. And we look forward to joining you again next time on the RTI Lowdown.